I'm Ellie Nieves, and I'm a women's leadership speaker and coach. Welcome to the Christian Career Women podcast. If you're a Christian woman who wants to honor God, live with purpose, be known for excellence and integrity, and achieve work-life balance, then this podcast is for you. At Christian Career Women, our goal is to help you aspire, achieve, and thrive in your faith, life, and work. To learn more and to join our free online community, go to christiancareerwomen.com. Enjoy the podcast. Hello, this is the Christian Career Women podcast, and I'm your host, Ellie Nieves. I'm the founder and president of the Christian Career Women Network, where we help women of faith to aspire, achieve, and thrive in their careers and personal lives. Our goal is to help ambitious women of faith to succeed God's way. We invite you to join our free private Facebook group. Just search for the Christian Career Women Network in the search bar. Our guest today is Peggy Bodde. Peggy is an entrepreneur and the founder of Sacred Work, an organization providing free career and leadership coaching for women. Peggy spent 25 years as a corporate executive and then pivoted to start a freelance writing business that caters to marketing firms and major textbook publishers. Her passion is writing about the intersection between faith and work and empowering women to show up boldly in both spaces. Today, we're talking about Peggy's book, Sacred Work, A Christian Women's Guide to Leadership in the Marketplace. Peggy, welcome to the Christian Career Women podcast.
Thank you, Ellie. And I have to tell you that since we have met in person, I am especially excited to be with you here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Peggy. So Peggy, tell us a little bit about your background, your education, your family life, hobbies.
Okay, well, I was born in Chicago, and then early in my teens, we moved to North Georgia, which is where I ended up going to college. I got a degree in English, taught high school for a few years, and then I applied and was accepted to law school. But I took an unexpected detour into the business world, which, as you mentioned in the intro, that detour lasted for 25 years. I never did go to law school. That was a God thing. So the bulk of my corporate life was spent in Salt Lake City, which is where my daughter still lives. And when God called me out of corporate to start my own business and found my ministry, my husband was working as an engineer and a director of manufacturing. And I think I gave him the entrepreneur itch because a couple years after I pivoted, he pivoted careers and became a professional artist. So since we both worked for ourselves, we had the freedom to move wherever we wanted to. And he wanted to live close to his parents so that we could help them as they got older. So we moved to a small mountain town in Southwest Colorado called Pagosa Springs. And we both enjoy the outdoors, especially fly fishing and hiking in the national forest, which is right behind our house. Awesome. And we're able to be caregivers for my mom-in-law. My father-in-law passed away, but my mom-in-law is going to be 91 this year. So we're able to be close to her and help her out. And I also lead a Bible study for women out of our home. And I have to tell you that there is nothing I love better, Ellie, than studying God's word, especially in community. So that's a little of my background.
So I love that you have talked about how God has flowed through these ebbs and flows that you've gone through in life, even when you didn't go to law school, right? You said God intervened. It was God's plan. So tell us a little bit about what the role of faith is in your career.
So faith is central to who I am, and it drives, for that reason, it drives my decisions, my attitude, how I approach my work, and definitely how I approach leadership. So I do my best, and I've learned the hard way. I do my best to integrate prayer and God's word into my career, just like every other area of my life. And I remember a time, and when I'm talking about learning the hard way, it's those times when we think that God isn't relevant or he might not have an opinion, so I don't really need to pray about this. And then the outcome is never good when I take the reins and shut him out. So I try to make it a point to invite him into my career, all aspects. I also think that the Holy Spirit is the most underutilized superpower that Christians have. He is the best business and leadership coach ever. So when I need discernment and wisdom in my professional life, I ask for it.
That's fantastic. And I love that you talk about leadership, because leadership comes with challenges, right? Leadership is never an easy, smooth sailing ride. So what are some of the challenges that you faced as you were striving to achieve your career goals?
I was a single mom for the bulk of my career, working in a male-dominated industry and company. So there were a lot of challenges in the form of bias and inequity, and I feel like we have come a long way in those areas. But when I was first starting out, obviously over 25 years ago, those challenges were very real, and there wasn't a lot of support in those areas. Another area that was challenging for me was my ability to find footing in the faith community as a female business leader. So that indirectly made achieving career goals difficult, because I often felt like, wow, I love my job as a leader, but I somehow feel like that makes me less than as a Christian woman and mom, especially a single mom. So feeling out of place in the faith community, along with the challenges I was facing as a woman in the workplace, that created a lot of doubt around the value of my career goals. So I think those are I would say those are the toughest challenges. I experienced all the typical new leader challenges along the way, but those are the hardest challenges. They took a lot of faith and a lot of spiritual wrestling to kind of get past that.
And thank you so much for sharing so much insight about, some of those challenges. I'm sure that a lot of women that are in our audience can really relate. You're one of my twin souls as well. I can relate to also navigating in all male dominated environments, and then also as a woman in leadership, not always being validated in a Christian community. But I'm assuming that some of this also inspired you to write your book, Sacred Work: A Christian Woman's Guide to Leadership in the Marketplace.
You are right on. So there is a pattern in my life where God calls me to be for others what was or is missing from my own life. And I remember big chunks of time when I prayed for a Christian business mentor, specifically a woman. And I thought that was important because I felt like a woman could understand my experiences at work, my challenges in the faith community. But even though I kept praying, there was no one. And I remember going to Barnes and Noble and asking a sales associate, do you have any books on Christian women in leadership? So they walked me over to this little tiny section on a small shelf, and it was all about how women can lead church ministry, which is fine, but that's not me, So I asked about overall Christian leadership books, and the associate took me to a bigger shelf, which was a row of books written by John Maxwell, but there were no books written by Christian women business leaders. So as I mentioned before, over time that's changed, but progress has been slow. So when I had the chance to enter a book proposal contest 3 years ago, God specifically called me to write the book I wish I would have had when I worked in corporate. And, you mentioned the book title, and Sacred Work is also the name of my foundation, where I offer free leadership and career coaching. So I see the book as an extension of that offering. It's kind of a pocket-sized mentor. And at the heart of my ministry and the book is something that I called recycled strength. And that's based on 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4. So I see that as when we take our painful experiences, even our failures, and we use those to help others so they can hopefully avoid learning the hard way like we had to. I just think that when God makes a way for us, we need to repurpose our faith and make a way for others.
Thank you for sharing that. And another topic that you address in your book is imposter syndrome. And so many women face this challenge. It's one of the top things I hear about whenever I coach women one-on-one is they talk about how they feel like they're imposters when they show up into corporate boardrooms. Why do you think it's important for women leaders to know and face their imposter syndrome? And what can they do about it once they acknowledge this in their trajectory?
I'm so glad you asked about this, and I have to agree with you. It is the number one struggle that women face that I coach, and that's been 10 years now, and it's a struggle that I've had myself. So imposter syndrome is sneaky because women think that it doesn't affect them, but it can actually stop you from achieving your professional goals and reaching your leadership potential. And as an example, let's say that you get a new role or a new job. Instead of being excited about it, women I've coached immediately start second guessing themselves, and they waste all this time and energy, and they ask questions like, well, maybe I'm a diversity hire. Maybe I really wasn't qualified, or maybe I just fooled everyone into thinking I was qualified. So when you first step into that new job or that new role, you have to be on point. You have to bring energy. You have to bring focus. That's critical. So you can't afford to be distracted by doubt. The second way that it can stop you from achieving your potential is it causes you to underassess your worth. You don't require other people to treat you fairly or with respect. So as a result, what women often do is they hold back from asking for raises or promotions, even though they deserve them, even though they're qualified. It kind of goes back to what I said before about feeling less than. If you feel less than, you accept less. And I guess I would say the last way that it interferes with women is that they often deflect praise and compliments. So instead of graciously and confidently accepting recognition, a new title, you resist and deflect. So when you do that, it's kind of dishonoring to the person who's complimenting you, but it also demeans your professionalism. So those are some ways that imposter syndrome can definitely interfere with a woman's ability to advance in her career. And I think you asked me about how to tackle that.
Yes.
So, and I'd be interested to hear your tips too. One of the things that I tell women to do is write a list of Bible verses of, where God is affirming to us our identity, and keep it where you can see it daily. So like one of my favorites is Romans 8:37, where God tells us that we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. So to me, that's powerful because it reminds me that I'm loved and I'm victorious. And it's something tangible I can look at. And then another tangible tip is to keep a file of all your professional achievements. So when a woman is sitting there and she's doubting if she really deserved the job or the promotion or the raise, I say, pull out that file, whether it's digital or physical. Look at your awards, look at your promotion letters, look at the emails you receive from colleagues complimenting you, look at the accomplishments that the projects you've completed. So reading through that file is a very practical, tangible way to remind yourself that, hey, I deserve to be here. I worked hard for this. I think another thing that's really important, and I'm really big on this, is talk to a trusted friend or a mentor. Because if we don't talk about things, we can't face things. And if we don't face things, we can't overcome them. So women who know us and care about us, I think, are priceless resources. And 9 times out of 10, they know exactly what we're talking about, and they've experienced it too. And especially close friends are really good about speaking the truth against the doubts that we have about our abilities. So those are some tips I would share. What would you add? I'm curious.
So I would add taking the Strengths 2.0 test. You can find it in any Barnes and Noble. It's one of the ways that I like to begin my coaching engagements because it really helps the people that I'm coaching to identify what their strengths are. And some of them actually know that those are their strengths, but it's nice to see it in writing. It affirms something that they might already believe or know about themselves, but maybe didn't have the language for.
So good.
And some people just have no idea that those are their strengths, right? And then I like to center the coaching around, well, how do we leverage these strengths in your day to day, right? That's from a practical perspective. But from a Christian perspective, and making sure that we're also aligning our goals in our professional lives with God, I like to do something very similar to what you said, which is actually go into the Bible. And if you're encountering some sort of a challenge at work, see if you could find any live examples within the Bible that might reflect or mimic the situation that you're in, or find those encouraging scriptures and turn those scriptures into affirmations. And I
Ah,
always encourage women to not only stick with one version of the Bible. I love the BibleHub.com. They also have an app, because they show you all the different versions of the Bible. And we all know that different versions of the Bible are it's the same message, it's just phrased differently. And sometimes one version might speak to you a little bit more than maybe what another version does. So I like, to encourage them to go in, look at some of the scriptures, find one that resonates with you, and then convert it into an affirmation.
I love that. That is really good. Really good.
Well, Peggy, I want to bring you back into this conversation, because this has been truly enlightening and then also encouraging, as somebody who's also, working day to day in corporate America. And I'm sure that you spend a lot of time also coaching new leaders. And I often mentor people in my day to day work. And what I see is that new leaders often shy away from conflict. They don't like confrontation. What kind of advice would you give them?
I have to agree with you on that too, that confronting conflict is something that new leaders tend to avoid. And then I don't know if you've seen this, but when you avoid conflict, it grows. So something that starts out as a tiny disturbance turns into a huge disruption for the whole company because you didn't deal with it. So the first piece of advice I give them is I tell them to depersonalize it, because conflict is inevitable. It doesn't matter if it's a disagreement between coworkers, departments, employees, and managers. There's always going to be personality differences. There's always going to be a difference of opinion. So conflict is inevitable. So don't take it personally. Take a step back and recognize that this is normal. This is expected. The second thing I tell them is don't procrastinate. Like I just mentioned, the longer you wait, the bigger the conflict grows, and it has a negative impact on the work environment. But I also point out, because I sometimes think they miss this, is your reputation as a leader erodes every day that you wait. Your reputation erodes a little more, because people are seeing that you don't have the ability to deal with this conflict and to manage it. The third thing I say from a practical sense is, you know what? This is your job. So we all have to do things that we don't like in our jobs, but this is what you're paid to do. And most new leaders really want to impress their boss. They want to do a good job for the people they're stewarding. So I remind them that managing conflict is part of what you're paid to do as a leader. And believe it or not, like the other responsibilities you have as a leader, it will get easier with time because you'll get more adept and experienced. And then I think something else, the last piece of advice I give them is think of conflict management as a conversation, because that's what it is. Don't get overwhelmed by it. Go into the conversation knowing the results you need, and then frame the conversation around it. Because I think what happens is a lot of times new leaders will think of every scenario that could possibly happen and what they should do in response to that. And then they have this huge thing in their minds, and it makes it really difficult to take the first step. And so I try to encourage them. The first step is a conversation. Prepare for that conversation and then schedule it and have it and go from there.
Super great advice. Really, really great advice. And when I think about also just managing conflict, it's something that you have to deal with whether you're an individual contributor or whether you're a manager. And if you are an individual contributor and you decide that you want to go into a management role, it almost becomes like a huge percentage of your management responsibility is to manage conflict, right, on a day-to-day. It's not just the substance, it's actually managing people, relationships, and conflicts that come along on an almost daily basis. So really, really great advice that you're providing us with there. So Peggy, let's bring this home, back to your career and your experience. Are there any leadership strategies that helped you get ahead in your career that you can share with our audience?
I would say the number one leadership strategy is a piece of advice that my first business mentor gave me. And that was to take care of the people you lead, and they'll take care of everything else. And so my number one leadership strategy is to put my employees first. And I know as far as advancing or getting ahead in your career, that may sound counterintuitive, but I've found that not only is servant leadership biblical, it mimics Christ, but it also brings out the best in our employees. And that leads to the best results. Employees who know we care about them are engaged, they're productive, they're happy. And if your employees are performing well, then that reflects positively on you. And it all starts with putting them first, above ourselves, and making sure that they're a top priority. So I would say that's the number one leadership strategy that's helped me.
That's fantastic. So Peggy, books are on the shelves. Sacred Work, A Christian Woman's Guide to Leadership in the Marketplace. Where can people find your book?
People can find my book at all major retailers. So Amazon, Target, all of them. So I would love it if they'd pick up a copy and then email me and tell me what they think about it.
Fantastic. And what's next for you personally, given you're an author, you're a coach, you've got this wonderful business. What's next for you personally?
So I am right now praying for God's direction about the future of my ministry, Sacred Work, trying to figure out if he wants me to expand that, and if so, how. But until I hear from him, I'm going to keep mentoring and coaching women just like I always have. And I'm going to keep writing and teaching my Bible study.
Fantastic. And I know that our listeners are going to want to get in touch with you. How can they do that?
They can go to my website, Peggy Bodde, and they can send a message to me there or sign up for my newsletter, which comes out twice a month. So if anything we talked about served them, I would encourage them to sign up for the newsletter, because it's more of the same content.
Well, Peggy, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today about your book, Sacred Work, A Christian Woman's Guide to Leadership in the Marketplace. You've been a fantastic guest, and you've left us with so much great advice and information. I'm sure that our listeners are going to run and get your book. Again, Sacred Work, A Christian Woman's Guide to Leadership in the Marketplace. And
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Peggy. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, God bless.